In the wake of the financial crisis, financial market regulators around the globe have considered as one of their measures some form of a financial transaction tax. And this has been implemented in some countries around the world, so it's already been tried. But there's some debate as to whether this kind of a tax actually achieves what it is intended to do. And up for a vote in Europe shortly is whether to implement a blanket financial transaction tax across the entire European Union. I have with me Rebecca Healey, senior analyst with the TABB Group, to discuss the finer intricacies of this debate.
Yep.
Thank you for being here, Rebecca.
Thank you for asking me along.
So Rebecca, first of all, let's define what this financial transaction tax covers. What kinds of transactions are covered?
Okay, so I think the first key point is there's two basic rates, which are 0.1% for cash and 0.01% for derivative products. But it will be all products that fall under this, so that actually includes bonds as well. So then you have, in addition, you're going to be taxed every single time that you do the trade. So it's both ends of the transaction, which is one of the concerns that the industry has in terms of this could be, you could potentially end up with the tax becoming more onerous than the actual transaction itself.
Because it's hit so many points in the transaction.
Multiple points. And it is also covered under the issuance and the residence principle, which has been introduced to try and ensure that nobody can theoretically avoid the tax. Right. But basically it means that if you are trading a European company, for example, such as Prada, and you trade it on Hong Kong, then you will still be eligible for the tax. So it has a huge remit right across Europe and actually across the globe.
Got it. And would this be implemented uniformly in exactly the same way across the whole European Union, or
well,
not?
No, this is another of the each national country has the right to be able to impose a greater tax. So, for example, Portugal has indicated that they wouldn't just stop at the 0.1%, they'd actually do 0.3, so 30 basis points. And it's becoming particularly onerous just for people to even begin to get their head around.
Definitely, yeah.
In terms of the various formats or flavours that this can actually come down.
Of course, it sounds very complicated. But first, what do the proponents think about this? What do they think is going to happen? What is the benefit?
Well, the theory from the impact assessment that they've actually put together, the idea behind it is that they're going to be able to raise revenue, valuable revenue, 34 billion euros, to create job growth within Southern Europe in particular, and can also look at climate change initiatives that they want to implement, which are all very beneficial.
Right, sounds all very well and good on the surface, yeah.
But the theory behind it is somewhat dubious in that the impact assessment has already been kicked out because the facts and figures don't add up. And as we've already seen, the revenues raised, from what we can see so far, it looks extremely dubious that they're going to be able to raise the 34 billion that they propose.
Okay, and you're saying that because this kind of financial transaction, well, a different version of a financial transaction tax has already been implemented in both in France and in Italy, correct?
Correct.
So we've been able to see some of the numbers coming out of those countries. What do they look like?
If we take the French financial transaction tax to begin with, and we've got a slide now that will show sort of the volumes that we've actually seen since implementation. So obviously, volumes dropped off a cliff in August, but actually that's, that is not the best month to look at France. Everybody knows that there's a large holiday period within France, so that the volumes have declined somewhat. What is interesting is the recovery. So it dropped off 40%, recovered 28% in September. Now that recovery is based, 40% of the recovery, according to some studies have shown, that the recovery was based in 5 names only. And I think this is where you're starting to see some of the unintended consequences of the financial transaction tax.
So Rebecca, why does it matter that the growth that you've seen is only in these 5 big names?
I think the key issue within Europe at the moment, if you're trading, is liquidity.
Yeah.
So what you're starting to see is the investment decision being dictated by the actual liquidity in the marketplace, because the ability to be able to exit your investment strategy as well as enter your investment strategy is becoming critical. The theory behind the recovery in Europe is based entirely on SMEs and the SME growth. Now, what this shows is that actually those are exactly the companies that are going to be shut out of the market going forward, which it has huge cause for concern. Yeah. Secondly, the revenues raised in France it's actually 0.06% of the GDP. According to the Financial Transaction Tax Initiative, they need to raise 0.4% of the GDP to be able to pay for their sins of the past, as it were. And in Italy, what we've also seen is, again, volumes have declined, but the industry is finding workarounds currently, because there's also an additional tax in Italy, which is if you trade OTC. So the transaction tax in Italy is 0.12 currently for cash. If you trade OTC or off exchange is 0.22. So this level of complication is not really helping matters, and I think this is actually one of the reasons why the European Union is very keen to get a harmonised version.
Europe has been in a sort of austerity mode, as we all know, for a very long time, and the economist who came up with the idea of the financial transaction tax to begin with, John Maynard Keynes, after the Great Depression, did so in sort of combination with the idea of stimulus spending. You know, he would not have probably thought it was a good idea to do this in combination with austerity. What do you think about that?
Well, this is the great debate, isn't it? And this is when you begin to realise that actually the financial transaction tax isn't necessarily a tax on financial services, it's actually a political tax. And it's much more about politics than anything else. And we've started to see how this could potentially play out in the next couple of months, because as it stands currently, as I mentioned earlier, it has been pushed back. It's due for a vote on May 28th by the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee. They are the ones that have actually kicked it out and said that they want over 100 amendments to the bill as it stands. Then it has to go up to a plenary session on June 7th. Then it goes to the national governments in September. So there's still a huge amount that is yet to be played out and yet to be decided. And I don't think it's any coincidence that actually the national implementation within each individual European country coincides with the German elections. And obviously Merkel has a huge challenge on her hands to get re-elected, although she individually is a very popular leader. Her party have got huge challenges. And then again, of course, you've got the elections in the UK, which happened last week, and UKIP gained considerably. They are a very anti-European parliament, party. So this is actually turning into a pro-anti-European debate, with industry actually stuck in the middle. And that's, this will have huge ramifications for businesses.
But so how do you see it playing out? Do you see the anti-Europe or the pro-Europe winning out here?
I think it really depends on just how vocal some of the European companies can be. And it's really interesting what's actually happened today in terms of two German companies that are part of a broader movement have come out and said, actually, this will cost us. It's no longer about financial services, which is so key to get this debate across.
Right, so up to this point, you've had only the financial services people saying, this is going to hurt us.
Exactly.
But nobody's really going to listen to that because
precisely, and
they're the ones affected.
It seemed like bleating by financial services and banks, and of course you're going to complain about this, but it's really important to get the point across that this is actually the man on the street that will be paying for this. And the fact that companies like Bayer, like Siemens, are coming out and they're saying, actually, this is going to impact our ability to do currency. So this will impact our ability to be able to use derivatives as for hedging purposes, for insurance. And our pension funds are going to be impacted as well by the returns. So actually, it isn't the banks that are going to be paying for this. This is really going to affect companies, and it's going to affect employees and the man on the street, and they are the people that are going to pay for this.
Right. And another aspect of that we discussed earlier is that, and I think people may not understand this fully, is that the way that the European Union works is that this money would go into a place where it would not be democratically divided amongst the constituents of the European Union, correct? How does it work?
The European Union would argue that it is, because effectively you vote for your MEP and then your MEP is able to do this. But the European financial transaction tax will be the first tax that goes straight to the European Union and doesn't actually go to the individual governments themselves. So the way the process works at the moment is that each national government has to pay a certain amount of money into the European Union pot. And that is debated very vigorously, as you can imagine in times of austerity, by individual governments. Now this will go straight to them, bypassing the national governments, which is a huge change in the whole democratic process within Europe, and again one that I'm not entirely sure everybody's picked up on.
Wow, well, I'm going to have to wrap it up there, but there are so many intricacies to this debate,
and it will go on.
I'm sure it will go on, and we should do a follow-up, shortly when we see what occurs with this vote that's coming up.
Great.
Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. This has been Rebecca Healey, Senior Analyst with the TABB Group. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.